The sound of the disruptor's shot echoed across the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, followed by the sickening thud of something soft hitting polished marble. A human child's life had ended in an instant, his small body crumpling as crimson stained the pristine floor. The alien executioner barely blinked as smoke curled from his weapon's barrel. That single moment shattered whatever fragile trust had existed between humanity and the Council. Across Earth, screens replayed the horrific scene, and an anger older than any written history began to awaken. Long-forgotten warships, buried deep beneath mountains and oceans, had been waiting for this, silent sentinels built for the day someone would cross the line. On the bridge of the HSS Indomitable, Captain Logan Carter stood rigid, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles blanched. His jaw locked as he watched the live broadcast. The Vorian counselor, Xanth, his gray-green skin gleaming under the council lights, wore a satisfied smirk as he announced the council's verdict: all human faster-than-light travel was hereby banned. Humanity would be imprisoned in its home system like livestock behind a fence. And then came the reason for the broadcast's horror. For the alleged crime of a human boy vandalizing a sacred alien shrine, the child had been dragged forward, sobbing, and executed without hesitation. "Let this serve as a warning to your primitive species," Xanth hissed at the cameras, his split mouth curling in disdain. "Defiance will no longer be tolerated." The feed abruptly cut, leaving only silence on the bridge. Logan's voice, when it came, was rough, raw. "They killed a child." Commander Hawkins gripped the rail beside him, his hands white with tension. "Orders, Captain?" Carter's eyes darkened like storm clouds. "Signal every fleet captain. Charge the Nova cannons. Plot a jump straight to the Council's doorstep." He turned slowly, his gaze sweeping across his crew. No one moved, no one breathed. They all felt it, the weight of this moment. This was the day humanity had feared would come, and yet had prepared for in the shadows. The day alien masks would drop, revealing the predators beneath. The day Earth would rise. Far below the quiet forests of the Rocky Mountains, stone groaned and cracked as immense camouflage doors slowly split apart, revealing a gaping maw of darkness beneath. Captain Carter descended into that darkness, flanked by his highest-ranking officers, their expressions a mix of grim focus and awe. The stairwell opened into a long concrete passageway, fluorescent bulbs flickering overhead. The steady click of their boots against the cement was the only sound, a grim drumbeat leading them toward the future. At the end of the corridor loomed a blast door so massive it seemed part of the mountain itself, solid steel, several feet thick. Logan stepped forward, placed his hand on the biometric scanner. The reader beeped, and with an ear-splitting groan the door began to move. Inch by inch, it lifted, until the cavern beyond swallowed the group whole. Floodlights blazed to life, revealing a sight no one would ever forget. Gasps broke the silence. Before them, stretching into the darkness, stood row upon row of warships, sleek, predatory silhouettes forged from strange, shimmering alloys that reflected the light like liquid fire. The air smelled faintly of oil and ozone, as though the ships had been waiting for centuries to breathe again. Logan faced his officers, his voice hard, steady. "Gentlemen," he said, "I present to you the Sigma Fleet, conceived in secrecy during humanity's earliest steps into the stars, hidden as our final contingency." Commander Hawkins stepped closer to one of the vessels, fingertips brushing the smooth metal prow. His voice was almost reverent. "I thought the Sigma Fleet was just a myth." Logan shook his head, eyes glinting in the harsh light. "No myth. Very real. And very ready. When the Council locked us in our own system, they had no idea what cards we were holding." He looked across the hangar, his voice rising like a drumbeat of war. "With these ships, we'll show them exactly what human willpower can create. They kill our children and call us primitive." His hand tightened into a fist. "Then we show them how we deal with tyrants. With the Sigma Fleet, we bring the fight to their gates." The officers exchanged glances. Their hesitation was gone. Steel filled their expressions. As one, they nodded. Logan turned toward the largest ship, the lead vessel, her hull a jagged reflection of the light, and strode forward, his men falling in step behind him. "It's time," Logan said, his voice echoing off the walls, "to remind the galaxy that humanity bows to no one. They pushed us too far. Now we push back. Today we strike first." His final words hung in the air like a promise. "Today we unleash the Sigma fleet." Light years away, Counselor Xanth reclined lazily on a floating divan in his opulent chamber. Silken drapes hung like waterfalls of color, and the air was thick with the cloying scent of alien incense. In one hand he held a goblet of luminous green liquor, so corrosive it could peel paint from a starship hull. To him, it was little more than refreshment. A soft chime interrupted his indulgence. A holographic screen flickered into existence, and the worried face of his Aaron aide appeared. YIK's normally dull gray skin flushed an uneasy violet. "Counselor," YIK stammered, "our long-range sensors have picked up a fleet. Unknown design. Closing fast." Xanth waved a jeweled hand with languid disdain. "Send a patrol to greet them. Likely some fledgling race flexing for attention." YK swallowed, his voice tightening. "Sir, the patrol is gone. Completely destroyed before they could even transmit an image of the attackers." The goblet slipped in Xanth's hand, green liquid sloshing over its rim. "What?" He sprang to his feet, his heavy robes swirling, and moved to a control panel. His long fingers flew across the keys. The chamber's light dimmed as a massive holographic star map flared to life, casting eerie blues and reds across his face. Clusters of red dots burned bright, advancing on the glowing blue orb representing his people's homeworld. Xanth's breath hitched. "There are hundreds," he whispered. "Hundreds of ships. How could this be? How could an unknown species build such a fleet without us knowing?" A cold dread coiled in his chest. He turned slowly back toward YIK's frightened eyes on the screen, and for the first time in many years, Counselor Xanth felt something alien to him. Fear. "YK," Counselor Xanth said, his voice a silken thread barely masking the storm inside him, "tell me everything about those ships. Every detail. Nothing omitted." The aide flinched at the icy tone, nodding rapidly. He began rattling off data, his voice trembling as the report unfolded into a nightmare. The mysterious vessels were a vision of calculated menace, sleek and angular, their surfaces clad in an iridescent alloy that shimmered with an otherworldly sheen. No scan could penetrate the strange material. Sensors returned only static and incomplete data. They moved with unnerving precision, every formation as crisp as a military drill, but impossibly fast, like they had rewritten the very rules of inertia. And their weapons? "By the ancestors," YK whispered, almost to himself. "Their weapons are—" He trailed off, but Xanth's glare urged him on. "Plasma cannons," YK finally said, voice cracking, "that shear through shields as if they were air. Missiles, too fast to track, and they never miss. And something else. A focused energy beam that cuts ships apart. Like slicing fruit." But what made the Ithorian counselor's blood run cold wasn't their speed or power. It was the emblem burned into the prow of every ship. A symbol whispered about in legends, dismissed as myth, feared even by the oldest races. The crest of the Terran Dominion. Humanity had returned, and this time, they weren't diplomats, explorers, or supplicants. They were conquerors, and they had come armed with nightmares made real. Xanth's knees buckled. He stumbled back from the holographic display, his mind replaying the scene of the human child, executed on the council floor by his order. He felt the walls of his own arrogance collapsing in on him. That act, that single calculated cruelty, had been the spark to this inferno. He knew it now. Too late. They all knew it, and there would be a price to pay. As the Terran fleet advanced, dread curdled in Xanth's gut, and one thought took root, cold and unshakable: there is no stopping this storm. The view screen blinked, and Captain Logan Carter appeared. Xanth's wide-set eyes bulged. His lips worked soundlessly for a moment like a fish gasping for breath. His talons dug into the arms of his command chair until the plastic creaked. Logan didn't wait for him to recover. "What do you want, human?" Xanth finally managed, his voice hollow, his body sagging like a deflated balloon. Logan leaned closer to the camera, his stare like a blade. "Justice." He didn't raise his voice, but the weight in that single word made the Ithorian counselor flinch. "The Council will rescind its ban on human FTL travel, effective immediately," Logan continued. "You will acknowledge our right to expand and explore as we choose. Any further aggression against humanity will be met with swift and devastating retaliation." Xanth's nostrils flared, the last flicker of pride fighting against his rising fear. "The Council will never agree to such demands," he spat. "You're one species. One. You cannot dictate terms to an entire galaxy." Logan didn't respond. He simply nodded to Samir at the tactical console. Samir entered a command. The screen shifted, Xanth's image shrinking into the corner as a new visual filled the display. The wreckage of an Ithorian battlecruiser floated in space, its twisted remains glowing cherry red. But that wasn't what made Xanth's throat constrict. From the Sigma fleet's hangars poured swarms of smaller craft, sleek and vicious like a cloud of metal wasps. They darted toward the Ithorian ships, their movements so sharp and unpredictable it was as if they could read the future. They opened fire. Beams of searing blue-white light sliced through shields, then hulls like hot knives through ice. Missiles spiraled out, corkscrewing into targets before detonating with horrifying precision. The Ithorian return fire was panicked and scattered. Their targeting systems simply couldn't lock on. The fighter hulls warped sensors, confused computers. In minutes, a third of the Eorian fleet was nothing but drifting wreckage. The rest broke formation, captains shouting over one another in desperate, overlapping orders. It wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. All the while, the Sigma fleet's capital ships held their positions, weapons armed but silent, letting the fighters do the work. They didn't need to fire a single heavy weapon. Logan's face returned to the main screen. "I won't ask again, Counselor," he said quietly, but there was iron under the words. "Yield. Let this end here." Xanth sagged into his chair. The fight had gone out of him. He glanced at his bridge crew and saw the same realization dawning there. They had underestimated the humans. Gravely. And they were bleeding for it now. With a trembling hand, Xanth terminated the transmission. The view screen went black. Logan turned to Hawkins, his jaw set. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Weapons tight. Give them a chance to comply." Hawkins relayed the order. The bridge fell silent. Every eye locked on the tactical display, watching the digital battlefield unfold, red and blue icons marking life and death. Slowly, almost grudgingly, the red icons began to change. One by one, the Ithorian ships powered down weapons and drives. They were surrendering. A cheer erupted on the bridge of the Indomitable. Fists pumped, backs were slapped, voices cried out in victory. Humanity had done the unthinkable, they had brought the mighty Galactic Council to its knees. But Logan didn't smile. He stood unmoving, eyes fixed on the display. Because he knew this was only the opening act. The Council would not forgive this humiliation. Political fury, covert strikes, sabotage, and all-out war, it would come, sooner or later. And yet, this moment marked a turning point, and Logan felt the weight of history shifting. Humanity would no longer bow. They had proven, in fire and blood, that they could stand against the galaxy's powers, and win. Today, they had taken their first step toward shaping their own destiny among the stars. And God help anyone who tried to take that future from them. Xanth stared at the fading tactical readouts, numbers and symbols blurring into nonsense as his mind reeled. The Terran ships were gone from his screens, vanished as if they'd never been there. But he knew better. They hadn't retreated. They were waiting. Invisible predators. He slammed his webbed fist into the console, barking guttural orders. Surround them. Box them in. Destroy them. The Vorian fleet lurched into motion, their massive capital ships straining to close the noose on their elusive prey. Weapons primed. Traps set. They would cage the Sigma fleet or die trying. Logan leaned back in his command chair, a slow, almost predatory smile curving across his lips as he studied the display. The alien fleet's movements were clumsy, desperate, even. "They're trying to box us in," Samir muttered, frowning as he traced the enemy's shifting lines on the tactical map. "Cut off our escape. Should I tell the fleet to pull back?" Logan shook his head, eyes glittering with anticipation. "Negative. They think they can play the superior species." He leaned forward, voice dropping into a tone of razor-edged calm. "Let's show them what humanity is really capable of." He keyed the fleet-wide comm. "All ships," he said. "Initiate Ghost Protocol." A chorus of confirmations lit the comm board. On the view screen, the Sigma fleet rippled like water disturbed by a stone. The ships blurred, distorted, then began to fade as the stealth fields engaged. Within seconds they were gone, vanished from sight, from sensors, from existence. Wraiths in the void. On the Vorian flagship, panic detonated like an alarm. Warning klaxons wailed. Crew members shouted over one another, clawing at consoles. Xanth stared at the empty readings in disbelief. "They're just gone." His voice cracked, the disbelief curdling into fury. "Impossible," he roared. But the protest dissolved into a scream as the ship bucked violently beneath his feet. Consoles erupted in showers of sparks. The deck pitched, tossing officers to the ground. Across the fleet it was the same story. One moment the void was still. The next, hell itself opened. Invisible weapons struck with merciless precision. Shields winked out like snuffed candles, alien hulls folding and crumpling under the invisible hammer blows. Fire blossomed in the darkness, bright, terrible blooms of red and gold, as Vorian warships died, one by one. Xanth staggered to the viewport, talons digging into the frame, his heart's pounding a terrified rhythm. He watched, powerless, as his fleet was dismantled before his eyes. They were being hunted. And the humans were merciless. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Logan Carter watched the carnage with an expression as cold as the void around them. "Let them feel it," he thought. "Let them taste the fear they've forced on so many others." "Ceasefire," he ordered at last. The command was delivered like a judge's gavel, final, absolute. The guns went silent. The void stilled. What remained of the Vorian fleet drifted as smoldering husks, their proud banners now little more than scorched metal and debris. Logan keyed the comm to Counselor Xanth's ship. The alien's face appeared on screen, ashen, trembling, eyes wide with animal fear. Logan's gaze was unblinking, a storm contained behind glass. "Look at your fleet, Counselor," he said, each word a deliberate blade. "See how it lies broken. Your so-called power has been revealed for what it truly is, a brittle facade." He leaned closer, filling the screen. "Just as you once held that human child's life in your hands," Logan continued, his voice low, lethal, "I now hold the fate of your entire species." Xanth's breathing quickened, his nostrils flaring. "I want you to feel that fear, Xanth," Logan pressed, his voice darkening. "I want you to understand in the marrow of your bones how close you are to annihilation, how easy it would be for me to give the word and see your kind erased." Then Logan smiled. "A thin, merciless thing. But I won't. Not yet." He straightened slightly, his voice turning sharp with command. "I spare you for one reason alone, to deliver a message. You will crawl back to your council and tell them what happened here. Tell them that their age of dominion is over." His voice rose, not in volume, but in power. "Humanity will no longer kneel. We will claim our rightful place among the stars. And any who oppose us," Logan's gaze hardened, "will be crushed to dust and scattered to the stellar winds." He raised his hand in a mock blessing. Go now. Run to your masters. Pray that when we meet again, I still feel merciful, for your sake and for your entire race. The transmission cut. The screen went dark, leaving Xanth staring at his own reflection. The taste of ash filled his mouth. The galaxy had changed today. And he had been the one to set the match to it all. On the Indomitable, Logan turned away from the dead screen, his face unreadable. This is only the beginning, he said quietly. The Council won't let this stand. They'll rally the other species and throw everything they have at us. Samir's voice cut through the heavy silence. Captain, if they unite the galaxy, even the Sigma fleet could be overwhelmed. We've got the tech edge, but they have the numbers. Logan nodded once, already considering the board beyond the current move. Then we level the field, he said. Helm, plot a course for the Corax Nebula. Maximum burn. The bridge crew exchanged wary glances, but no one argued. Hands moved over controls. The deck rumbled beneath their feet as the Sigma fleet leapt into hyperspace. Stars streaked across the view screen, lines of light blurring into infinity. Moments later, Logan stood in the briefing room with his senior officers, the holographic table casting ghostly light over their faces. The Corax Nebula, Logan said, tapping a point on the map. Vorian territory. They were once a warrior race, fierce and proud, until the Council broke them centuries ago. He looked around the table, voice firm. They've been slaves ever since. But our intel says they're ready to rise. If we give them the chance, an alliance with them could give us the manpower we need. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the nebula's edge. The view screen filled with a swirl of purple and blue gas, like paint spilled across the stars. Sensors pinged, Vorian mining outposts dotting the region like embers. Each one was bristling with Council overseers. Logan's lips curved in a predatory smile. All ships, he ordered. Disengage cloak. The void shimmered, and the Sigma fleet appeared. The sudden revelation of those warships sent the overseers into chaos. Within minutes, Council vessels were in full retreat, their engines burning as they fled. Behind them, Vorian workers watched from their stations, stunned and then hopeful, as the human ships hung over them like avenging angels. A channel opened on the Indomitable's bridge, and the weathered face of a Vorian leader appeared on screen. His scales, a dull bronze, bore the pale streaks of old scars, marks of wars fought long ago. His slit-pupilled eyes narrowed at Logan, assessing. I am Captain Logan Carter of Earth, Logan said evenly, his voice carrying the weight of intent. We're here to offer you something your people haven't had in centuries, a chance to break your chains. And take revenge on those who enslaved you. The Vorian's posture stiffened, suspicion etched into every flick of his tail and curl of his claws. And why, he said, his tone heavy with mistrust, should we trust you, human? Your species is a newborn in this galaxy. What could you possibly offer us? Logan's gaze didn't waver. Without a word, he sent the transmission of the Sigma fleet's confrontation with Counselor Xanth. The battle, the destruction, the sheer dominance of Earth's hidden armada. The Vorian leader's eyes widened as the footage played, disbelief melting into something sharper. Hunger. When the recording ended, the alien looked back at Logan, his voice lower, but laced with a new, grudging respect. You've proven your strength, Earther, he said. What do you want from us? Logan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a quiet intensity. An alliance. Fight alongside us, and together we'll smash the Council's grip on this galaxy. Not just for humanity, his voice hardened, but for every people they've crushed under their boot. For a heartbeat, the Vorian said nothing. Then, suddenly, his head tilted back and he laughed, a harsh, guttural sound, thick with bloodlust and the promise of violence. You have a deal, human. The Vorian will stand with you. And together, we will savor the Council's terror. The screen went dark. Logan turned to his crew, fire flickering in his eyes. The pieces are moving, he said. Prepare the fleet. It's time we take the fight to the Council's very doorstep. The combined human-Vorian fleet erupted out of hyperspace at the edge of the Galactic Council's home system. Before them lay a cluster of worlds, heavy with orbital stations and vast trade hubs, the beating heart of the Council's power. Instantly, alarms screamed across the system. On every frequency, warning klaxons blared. The Council's defenses surged awake, like an iron giant roused from sleep. Fleets from every corner of the galaxy converged, forming a wall of warships around the Council's central world. On the Indomitable's bridge, Logan stood with arms folded, his eyes sweeping the tactical display. "They've recalled every fleet they had," he said quietly. "The core of their strength is here." Samir's scowl deepened as he studied the readout. "Even with the Vorian ships, we're still outgunned," he warned. "They have raw firepower we can't match." Logan nodded grimly. "Which is why we won't hit them head-on." He keyed the fleet-wide comm. "All vessels, commence Phase 1. The human and Vorian ships didn't dive straight at the waiting armada. Instead, they swept outward, skirting the system's edge, curving like a blade around the enemy line. Their target, a massive space station bristling with communication towers and sensor arrays. Logan gestured at the image on screen. "That's their comms nexus, their eyes and ears. We take it out, they're blind and deaf. Chaos will do the rest." Council warships guarding the station scrambled to intercept. Just as the two forces closed to firing range, something strange happened. The human ships blurred, then fractured. Each vessel split into a dozen ghostly mirror images, flooding enemy scanners with false returns. Council captains hesitated, thrown off by the phantom fleet. By the time they realized which ships were real, the trap had already sprung. The real Sigma fleet ships, cloaked by sensor trickery, were already inside their perimeter. The void ignited. A vicious melee engulfed the station. Council ships fought hard, but their tactics crumbled against humanity's technology and the Vorians' savage fury. In minutes, the station's defenses lay in ruins. A wave of quantum torpedoes hammered the main structure. Dozens of brilliant detonations tore it apart, shredding it into a growing cloud of fire and debris. Across the system, Council ships faltered. Their communications cut, their fleet network disintegrated into static. Logan didn't waste a second. "Press the advantage," he ordered. The combined fleet struck like lightning, hammering shipyards, weapons platforms, and fuel depots with surgical precision. On the Indomitable's bridge, Logan watched the map as the Council's flawless defensive line unraveled. "Phase 1 accomplished," he said. "Commence Phase 2. This time, the fleets didn't skirt the enemy. They plunged straight at them. Weapons live. Shields flaring." Logan opened a channel to the Council flagship. "This is Captain Logan Carter of the Sigma Fleet," he said, his voice calm, cutting. "Your comms are shattered. Your defenses are crumbling. Your fleet is breaking. Surrender now and you live." For a long, tense beat, nothing. Then a familiar face filled the screen, Counselor Zant. His features were twisted in hatred, his voice raw with defiance. "We will never yield to you, human scum. We will fight to the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath." Logan's face didn't change. "So be it." He cut the feed with a flick of his hand. "Signal the fleet," he told Hawkins. "No mercy. End this." The combined human and Vorian armada slammed into the Council's fleet like a meteor storm. The void became a battlefield of light and fire. Beams of energy lanced across the dark, missiles streaked in deadly arcs, and explosions lit the gulf between ships like newborn suns. The Indomitable shuddered under repeated hits, its shields flaring bright as they absorbed the blows. On the main screen, Logan watched a human destroyer vanish in a bloom of plasma, obliterated by a Council dreadnought's siege cannon. Nearby, a Vorian cruiser, its hull aflame, rammed into a Council frigate, both ships vanishing in a blinding explosion. "Concentrate fire on their command ships," Logan barked, his eyes locked on the tactical display. "Cut off the head, the body dies." The fleet obeyed, shifting formation, the Indomitable leading the spearhead. Ahead, the Council's largest battleship loomed, its hull scarred and scorched, yet still spewing fire. Its grav cannons pounded the Indomitable's shields, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. Acrid smoke filled the bridge. "Divert power to forward shields and weapons!" Logan shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. He turned sharply. "Samir, find me a weak point." Samir's fingers flew across his console, eyes narrowing as data scrolled faster than most could follow. "There," he shouted, tapping a glowing readout. "A fluctuation in their AR shield grid, coordinates Gamma 615. Logan didn't hesitate. "Helm, bring us starboard hard." The Indomitable swung sharply, its massive frame groaning under the sudden maneuver. Its prow now lined up perfectly with the Council battleship's stern. "Guns, fire!" The ship's main batteries answered with a deafening roar, lances of energy slicing across the void. The beams slammed directly into the vulnerable coordinates Samir had identified. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the alien battleship swelled grotesquely, fractures spiderwebbing across its armored surface. Secondary detonations blossomed from within, 1, 2, then dozens, until a final, silent burst tore the ship apart. The mighty vessel disintegrated, its reactor breach turning it into a glowing graveyard of debris. Through the spreading wreckage, Logan saw it, the Council flagship. A massive dreadnought, bristling with weapons, the seat of the Council's power, and Councilor Xant's throne. Logan leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing into slits. "All ships," he ordered, his voice cutting like steel. "Converge on the flagship. It's time to cut off the head of the snake." The combined human and Vorian fleet surged forward. Their weapons opened up in unison, beams of burning light sliced through enemy hulls, while missiles spun and twisted through space before detonating against crumbling shields. Council ships fired back, but it was chaos. Human technology and Vorian ferocity made for an unstoppable storm, overwhelming their defense line ship by ship. At the heart of it all, the Indomitable locked horns with Xant's flagship in a brutal duel. Energy lances traded back and forth, chewing through plating, boiling away metal like wax before a flame. On Logan's bridge, a console exploded in a shower of sparks. The deck lurched under his feet as the ship trembled violently. "Return fire!" Logan barked. The Indomitable's guns boomed in defiance, hammering round after round into the flagship's stern. Enemy shields flared, flickered, and, finally, collapsed. Fire erupted from the dreadnought's engines as human weapons tore into its rear sections. But then, the Council's giant struck back. Its main weapon, a monstrous particle beam cannon, lit the void. The Indomitable's shields flared, shining brilliantly for one fleeting instant, then failed. The beam slammed into the dreadnought's bow. Decks vanished. Bulkheads vaporized. The front of the ship was carved open like a gutted animal. The bridge descended into chaos. Panels detonated, flames and shards of metal spraying across the room. Crew were hurled from their stations as the ship bucked wildly. Logan dragged himself upright, blood trickling into his eyes from a gash on his forehead. Damage reports screamed across the comm. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Weapons array down. Engines crippled. The dreadnought didn't relent. Another salvo. Then another. The Indomitable shook and burned, each hit stripping away more of her strength. Logan's hands tightened on his chair, knuckles white. His vengeance, his mission, slipping away. Then, salvation arrived like thunder. A squadron of Vorian cruisers, seeing the Indomitable's peril, broke formation. They didn't hesitate. They charged. Their guns screamed, pouring fire into the Council dreadnought. The flagship's shields were already hanging by threads from its duel with the Indomitable. The Vorian assault shredded the last of them. The dreadnought faltered as its armor was savaged from all angles. Vorian ships swarmed like enraged hornets, hammering engines, blasting weapons arrays, clawing away at its defenses with merciless precision. Within minutes, the unstoppable dreadnought was nothing more than a drifting carcass, its weapons silent, its pride turned to ash. On the Indomitable's battered bridge, a ragged cheer erupted. Logan sagged back in his command chair, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. He looked out at the battlefield. The Council fleet, stunned by the destruction of their flagship and dreadnought, was retreating in panic. "Cease fire," Logan ordered, his voice heavy with fatigue. "Begin rescue and recovery." He rubbed a hand across his bloodied forehead. "And someone," he muttered, "get me a full damage assessment." In the battle's aftermath, the Indomitable drifted like a wounded titan. Her hull bore the scars of fire, gouged armor, blackened scorch marks, gaping rents where enemy fire had punched through. Damage control crews scrambled through smoke-filled corridors, sealing breaches, rerouting power, dragging injured crewmen to safety. In the dim light of the bridge, Logan bent over a flickering screen beside his chief engineer, both of them scanning lines of red text. "Divert every what we can spare to the repair drones," Logan ordered. "Hull integrity and engine function are priority one. I want us battle-ready yesterday." As the Indomitable's crew worked furiously, the rest of the battered fleet limped into view. Dozens of ships bore their own wounds, scarred hulls, burned plating, shattered sections, but they were alive. The Vorian ships, angular and fierce, swept in, their hulls streaked with vibrant war paint. They docked with the Indomitable, hatches opening to disgorge laughing, shouting warriors. The human ship's hangar transformed into a celebration. Vorian soldiers clashed their weapons together, roared out victory songs, and downed brimming flagons of a shimmering liquor that smelled like jet fuel and burned twice as hard. Human crew members, drawn into the infectious revelry, joined them, sharing war stories, slapping backs, toasting the impossible victory. But even as the hangar shook with laughter and the clang of steel, the comm channels began to flood. Urgent messages piled in, one after another. Logan's expression darkened. He summoned his senior staff to the briefing room. Reports rolled across the table's holographic display as his voice turned grave. "Word is coming in from across the galaxy," Logan said. "With the Council's main fleet destroyed and their communications shattered, uprisings are breaking out everywhere. Entire worlds are rising against their overlords." Samir leaned forward, eyes blazing. "This is the moment, sir. The Council is stumbling. If we hit them now, hard and fast, we could end their tyranny for good." Logan nodded slowly, mind already moving to the next step. He turned to the Vorian commander beside him, a grizzled veteran with a jagged scar running across his scaled face. Logan turned to face the scarred Vorian commander. "What say you, Commander Trax?" Logan's voice was steady, but there was fire beneath it. "Your people have suffered under the Council's yoke for centuries. Will you fight with us, for this final push?" Trax's fanged grin was feral. "The Vorian are with you, human," he rumbled. "Our blades are thirsty for Council blood. Give the order, and we'll unleash the fury we've held back for far too long." Logan stood slowly, the weight of his decision settling over him like armor. "Then it's decided," he said, voice like flint striking steel. "We launch a coordinated assault on every Council stronghold. We hit them from all sides, we cut off the head of the snake. And we finish this." The fleet commanders departed, urgency in their stride, scattering to brief crews and prepare for the storm to come. An urgent signal blinked on Logan's private comm. He frowned, stepping into a shadowed alcove to take it. The screen flared to life, revealing the gaunt, haunted face of one of his deep-cover operatives, eyes sunken, shoulders hunched, voice pitched low with dread. "Captain," the operative whispered, glancing over his shoulder as though the walls themselves were listening. "I have news. Urgent news." Logan's gut tightened. "Speak." "It's Counselor Xanth," the operative said. "He's alive." The word struck like a blow. Logan's blood went cold. "What?" "I don't know how," the man stammered, "but he escaped the destruction of his flagship. He's rallying what's left of the Council's forces, preparing a counterstrike. The operative's lips trembled before the final blow landed. And Captain, there's more. He has something. A weapon. They say it's a Doomsday device, powerful enough to erase entire star systems. The weight of the words hung heavy in the air. Logan's fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. If Xanth unleashed that weapon. Logan's voice, when it came, was granite. Understood. Keep feeding me intel. He cut the channel, jaw set like stone. The Indomitable and her allies made the jump. Stars stretched into streaks of light, the void bending around them as they hurtled toward destiny. Their destination, a remote, heavily fortified Council base, where Xanth was said to be holed up, Doomsday device in hand. It would be a mission fraught with peril. A race against Annihilation. But as Logan turned his gaze on his crew, faces drawn, yet hard with resolve, he felt a spark of hope ignite beneath the dread. These weren't just soldiers. They were champions, the tip of humanity's spear. The Indomitable dropped from hyperspace at the edge of the base's sensor net. Stealth protocols, Logan ordered, his voice low. Not so much as a whisper. The mighty dreadnought slipped into the shadow of an orbiting moon, its sensor-absorbing hull cloaking it in near invisibility. In the armory, Logan gathered his strike team. These were the best humanity had, the ones who volunteered when no one should, who ran toward danger rather than away. As they checked weapons and secured armor plates, the room thrummed with electric tension. Logan moved among them, his gaze unwavering as he looked each in the eye. You know the stakes, he said, voice quiet but carrying through the room. If we fail, if Xanth fires that weapon, there's no coming back. He gripped the nearest soldier's shoulder, his hand firm, grounding. But we will not fail. We cannot. The fate of the galaxy rests on our shoulders. The team nodded, their faces carved with determination. They understood. They were ready. The Indomitable glided silently through the dark like a predator. On the bridge, Logan stood tense and still, his eyes locked on the base swelling on the viewscreen. Prepare for breach, he commanded. The strike team snapped helmets into place, weapons checked one last time. Their faces were grim, set for war. The base's defenses came alive. Energy cannons swiveled. Missile racks turned like hungry jaws. But the Indomitable was already invisible to their eyes. Fire the EMP, Logan said. From the dreadnought's prow erupted a crackling wave of blue-white energy. It washed over the station, snuffing its systems like candles in a storm. Defenses went dead. Turrets sagged. Lights flickered and died. Go, go, go! Logan roared. Breach pods launched like silver bullets, slamming into the base's armored hull. Plasma torches hissed, cutting through steel like a knife through wax. Panels fell away, and humanity's spear point spilled into the corridors beyond. Alarms screamed. Red emergency lights strobed as the base woke in chaos. Council shock troops rushed to meet the intruders, their armor gleaming in the flashing light. Plasma fire filled the air, turning the corridors into a crossfire furnace. The smell of ozone and burning metal stung the nose. Smoke curled, mixing with the acrid stench of charred flesh. Logan moved like a storm, his plasma rifle spitting bolts of lethal blue. Each step forward left broken bodies in his wake, his team tight behind him. The Council's guards came like a flood. For every one they felled, two more surged in. Every inch of ground was paid for in blood. A bolt hissed past Logan's head close enough to burn his hair. He dropped to a knee, fired 3 rounds in quick succession. 3 guards fell, one clutching the smoking ruin where his chest had been. To his left, Sergeant Hawkins grappled with a hulking alien soldier, the two locked in a savage brawl, rolling across the blood-slicked deck. To his right, Private Xiang screamed, clutching the blackened stump of her leg, her voice cutting through the roar of battle. Still they pushed. Driven by sheer will. They had come too far. Sacrificed too much. There was no turning back. At last, after what felt like hours, they reached the heart of the beast. The doors loomed ahead, the The central command center. Thick metal. Reinforced. Imposing. Logan didn't hesitate. He slapped a breaching charge on the massive slab of steel and stepped back, finger hovering over the trigger. His voice was calm, almost cold. Breach in 3, 2, 1. 1. The world shattered into smoke and thunder as the breaching charge detonated, ripping the massive doors from their frame and slamming them against the far wall like sheets of paper. Logan was already moving, his boots pounding the floor before the echoes even faded. He stormed into the command chamber, rifle raised and ready. There, standing in the center of the room amid a forest of consoles and glowing holograms, was Counselor Xanth. The alien's lips curled into a cruel smile as his slitted eyes fixed on Logan. His hand hovered over a control stud, his voice dripping venom. "You're too late, human," Xanth gloated, malice in every syllable. "With one command I can unleash the Doomsday device, and watch your precious worlds burn." Logan's rifle rose higher, his finger tightening on the trigger. "It's over, Xanth," he said, voice flat, final. "Step away." But Xanth only laughed, a manic, jagged sound that echoed off the steel walls. "You think you've won? You think your little rebellion means anything?" he snarled, eyes gleaming with fanaticism. "The Council's power is eternal. I'll see it restored, even if I have to destroy 1,000 worlds to do it." With a furious snarl, his palm slammed down on the panel. The sound of the impact rang sharp in the sudden silence. But nothing happened. No alarms. No activation sirens. No telltale hum of an apocalyptic weapon coming online. Xanth's smile faltered. His eyes flicked to the console, then widened in disbelief. He struck the panel again. Harder. And again. Still nothing. His movements grew frantic, slapping the controls like a desperate gambler shaking a dead machine. Then he spun toward Logan, confusion and fury etched across his face. Logan allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "Did you really think we came here without a plan?" he asked softly. Xanth's breath caught. "While you were watching us," Logan continued, stepping forward, his tone cutting like glass, "our operatives were hacking your systems. Your weapon is dead. Your power is gone." His eyes locked on the aliens. "It's over, Xanth. You've lost." For a long moment, the Ithorian just stared, mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. Then, with a scream like a wounded beast, he lunged. A blade sprang from his sleeve, glinting wickedly. Logan didn't flinch. He met the charge head-on, snapping his rifle up to block the blow. Steel rang against composite as the two leaders collided in a brutal struggle. The command center became their arena. They slammed into consoles, sparks flying as delicate tech shattered under their weight. Xanth's blade flashed, biting across Logan's ribs, a line of fire across his side. Logan grunted, pain searing, but didn't stop. He drove his elbow into Xanth's throat, the blow collapsing the alien's breath into a choking wheeze. The Ithorian staggered, gasping, and Logan pressed the advantage. A savage kick to the knee. A hammer strike to the temple. The alien fell, blade clattering to the floor. Logan stood over him, chest heaving, blood dripping down his side, ribs aching with every breath. Xanth glared up, hatred blazing in his dark eyes. "Finish it then, human," he spat, blood thick on his tongue. "Take your revenge." Logan stood motionless, rifle aimed at the alien's skull. The temptation burned in his veins like molten lead. One pull of the trigger, one moment, and justice would be done. But then, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Logan turned, and his blood turned to ice. The Doomsday device's core, a pulsing sphere of dark, swirling energy, was sparking violently, arcs of electricity crawling across its surface like living things. Red warning lights stuttered to life, flashing an urgent, hellish glow. The low hum of the machine deepened into a teeth-rattling thrum, the sound of imminent catastrophe. Logan understood instantly. In the chaos, something, maybe a stray shot, maybe a shattered console, had damaged the containment field. The core was destabilizing, and soon it would explode with the force to erase everything for light years. His mind raced, calculations flashing and dying as fast as they came. There wasn't time to evacuate, not time to shut it down, not time for anything, except one last gamble. Logan turned to his strike team, the survivors of the blood-soaked corridor gauntlet. They were battered, burned, bloodied, but still standing. "Get back to the ship," he ordered, voice raw but firm. "Sir," Sergeant Hawkins began, eyes wide. "What about you?" Logan's jaw clenched. "I'll stay. I'll try to contain the blast. Buy you time." Realization dawned in Hawkins' eyes, followed by a crack of anguish. "No, Captain." Logan raised a hand, silencing him. "That's an order, Sergeant." His voice softened, but the steel stayed. "Get them out. That's the only way." For a moment, they just stared at each other, decades of loyalty and service shared in that silence. Then Hawkins nodded slowly, tears shining in his eyes. "It's been an honor, sir," he said softly, snapping a final salute. Logan returned it, vision blurring. The honor was mine. One by one, the strike team withdrew. Each paused, offering a word, a clasp of hands, a nod that spoke louder than any speech. Logan watched them go, pride and sorrow battling in his chest. Then he was alone. The command center was silent except for the deepening hum of the unstable core. Logan turned to face it. He squared his shoulders, feeling the cold knot of fear inside him, and pushing it aside. He thought of Earth, the hills of his childhood, green and endless. He thought of his crew, their courage, their trust. He thought of that boy, the child murdered on the council floor, the spark that lit this fire. "This is for you, kid," Logan whispered, stepping toward the pulsing sphere. "For all of you." He walked into the light. The world erupted in brilliance. A storm of searing white and thunderous sound swallowed everything. And Captain Logan Carter knew no more. You have reached the end of this story. If you enjoyed this tale and want to support us, leave a like and subscribe. Comment 88, and I'll heart every single one. Thank you for listening.